Good day, everybody. Rob Mazak here. I am a psychic medium. I do a lot of different podcasts on topics that are very diverse, sometimes metaphysical, spiritual, alternative, worldly, just about anything that comes up. We will talk about it. There's nothing really off the table. And tonight I wanted to talk about the monkeypox discussions and activity and news that has been popping around a lot more recently. And, I like to pay attention to these things because this kind of activity and this kind of response is how, in my opinion, in my research, how the COVID epidemic or pandemic or plandemic or however you like to look at it came to be. And so I like to pay attention to this and see if I can find the breadcrumbs, the trail that leads to the beginning and the ideas behind this and what's really going on. And a lot of people are talking about it. I get it. Probably just another one of those. Let's kind of circle back on the COVID thing first, a little background. When COVID first came out, I'm going to summarize, obviously, it's just there's a lot there. But when COVID came out, late 2019 and in the United States in early 2020, it made a very rapid transition to a pandemic. Now, was it something planned, something that was purposely infiltrated into the environment, introduced through labs or leaks or accidentally on purpose? Who knows? Regardless, it put the world at halt. It changed just about everything we know about freedom and rights and movement, the authority that the medical community at large has over events like this. I mean, the CDC, I think, recently signed, or many nations signed, an agreement that, I think is an agreement or contract, I'm not sure how that's classified, but giving them basically like ultimate control powers when it comes time for trying to stop the spread of a disease or a pandemic or an epidemic or anything like that. I mean, basically taking away all the powers of any state, any country. And that's kind of scary enough as it is. During COVID, it was no different, because during COVID is kind of where they began to experiment with this, to learn how to take control of the world and states and the different nations. I'm not saying this is actual fact. I'm talking about my opinion, and this is based a lot on research and experience that I've had with COVID. However, COVID was a huge event or events. Lots of things happened during COVID. It was absolutely crazy. And when you start to follow some of the breadcrumbs for COVID, it was pretty interesting. I remember watching a video on an alternative news channel about the fact that COVID stimulus money was introduced, long before the actual COVID or pandemic officially was declared and started in the United States in 2020. If you remember, the news made it sound like that they introduced this stimulus package to help everybody out. It was introduced and approved within, a couple months, I think, maybe 3 months at most. But when you really look back at the stimulus package, the original stimulus package, it dates back to January of 2019. And all the same funding and ideas and monies that were introduced as new legislation in March of 2020 was actually not new. It had been there in place at least for a year. And much of that funding went way out to 2024, late 2023, I think, if you read the bill. I have the link for it. I'm not making it up. It's there. You can find it. When those monies ran out, which was predicted or laid out in that original bill, guess what? The COVID pandemic was officially declared over when the money's ran out. Go figure, right? Maybe coincidence, who knows? Doesn't matter. But when you look at these big ideas and these things like this, you really have to pay attention, pique your interest, because there's something more going on there. And I'm not saying that everybody that's in on this is devious and bad, because there's a lot of good research and there's a lot of things that happen, but somewhere in the mix, I'm sure that this is not being done for a beneficial reason. Probably more about money and control than anything else. My opinion, of course. But that my opinion does get based on a lot of stuff that I research. I don't just say things at face value. So once again, still not truth. But I remember being in the Army, active duty, a while back. I was in when they had the anthrax scares. When remember when all the letters were supposedly being mailed to high-level politicians laced with anthrax, and it was just happening all over the place. And I remember how quickly they put that into place as a pandemic, or they didn't call it a pandemic, but as a state of emergency. And in the military, they created a program like almost overnight, which they probably already had in place, ready to go. Once again, my opinion. But they made it absolutely mandatory that you had to take this I think it was a 6-shot series of anthrax. And, of course, the anthrax shot was nothing new. I mean, it wasn't a experimental vaccination, because they've been using it for a while, cattle farmers and things like that, because you can get anthrax from animals. I remember it was just like the COVID vaccine in the military. If you refused to get it, you were discharged under other than honorable conditions. So you didn't necessarily get an honorable discharge because you wanted to make a choice with your body. Of course, when you're military, you're kind of owned by the government. So, I get that. But at the same time, I watched so many people get these crazy issues from being forced to take this anthrax series. And it was just, because I worked in the medical field. I worked at, a lot of large scale hospitals, burn center, and a lot of different things. And so I had firsthand information, or at least experience, on these things. And so this happens a lot. And that's why I personally like to pay attention, because you just really never know what's behind the scenes. I mean, if you look back at history, we've been experimenting on humans with, diseases and processes, and how do they react when, you get sprayed with, certain diseases and infectious products, things like that. And it happens all the time. And I'm sure it's going on now. I'm sure it's in just about everything we have. It's in our food sources and in the skies. And I'm not trying to sound like a doomsday kind of guy. I'm just trying to pay attention and talk about what I see, what I hear, what I've experienced. And that's pretty much it. If you guys think that the United States is this goody-goody country, what I mean by United States, I'm talking about the governmental arm of the United States. If you think that we are just the good guys and everybody else are the bad guys, I think we got another thing coming there. I think that you just have not been exposed to certain things. Because I've been on a lot of nuclear and biological and chemical teams. That was tough to say when I was in the military. And I had firsthand experience seeing and knowing the I'm talking about huge stockpiles of biological, nuclear, and chemical agents that are stored. We won't talk about where it's at. But it is like miles and miles and miles and miles. I mean, just as far as you can imagine of bunkers of all this stuff. Why do we have all that? You know, I'm sure there's a reason, and I'm sure it's not necessarily a good one. Many of these things that have come out, you know, AIDS was another, right? A lot of these things are developed in labs. If you go look at disease processes, you know, AIDS, for example, COVID as well. COVID is kind of natural, but there was a whole number of different disease processes that were developed in the lab. And if you go look at those diseases and you look at the vaccines, in order to have a vaccine developed for a disease process, you have to have a patent. And so you have to have a patent on the thing that causes the disease in order to have a patent on the thing that helps to eliminate it. So are we developing more robust disease processes and infectious products just to make money on vaccines? I'd like to think we're not. However, a lot of the evidence points to this. I mean, there's nothing really hidden. You just got to know where to find it. And yes, I have worked alongside a lot of World Health Organization type people, not recently, you know, many years ago. And I understand the process for vaccine and new drug development. And it's definitely pretty robust. And, you know, there's a lot of processes, clinical trials, animal trials, then human trials. So I was on the human use committee before. And so I was that voice that says, hey, wait a minute, you know, so I don't know if I made a difference, but anyway, so I've been in this game for a little while. I'm no expert by any means. I just have enough experience to really think about things and really doubt what's happening. Now we have this monkeypox thing. I'm not saying it's not a real thing. I'm sure it is. And it's kind of related to the smallpox, which is supposed to have been eradicated from the planet. Well, that's probably not true. I'm sure that it's still out there. And I'm sure that, you know, this as a derivative of smallpox would really mean that smallpox is not eradicated. There's been a lot of different versions of smallpox as well. Why is there so many versions? It could be because it's mutating. It could be because it's just a natural process, you know, against the vaccines that are introduced to people and figures out a way to survive. Or it could be that we're developing more different strains and versions in labs, which, you know, you can do that research too. There is biological chemical labs all over this planet or this place we live. And you can find them. It's public knowledge. It's not a secret. And so why do we have these things? I worked in an institution when I was in the military that did the same thing. It did a lot of all those things that we're just talking about. Clinical trials, animal trials, human trials. I'm sure that the better part of the people involved in this process are doing it because they want to help save human lives. You know, but there's also that other component that money is driving the train. So monkeypox, I believe it began being discussed around 2022 in the United States at least. And that's what I could find when I was doing some research today, actually. So I was watching a video about this vaccine enforcement idea that's being born, I guess, and there was a lot of videos put out or little clips of them where that's happening a lot, especially in other countries. Not so much the U.S. right now, but you know, places like New Zealand, I understand, and they're really taking it serious over there, and other places. I'm sure you've seen all the Chinese things back when COVID was happening, but monkeypox is definitely on the forefront now. And when I was trying to find that breadcrumb to the funding, which is always a good place to start, I couldn't find, I'm not saying it's not there, but I couldn't find the same type of stimulus package information. I'm sure it's there. Maybe I'll do some more research. Maybe you guys can do some more research. But it's probably there. And I'm hoping that this is all being done for absolutely good reasons. But what I did find, though, that the World Health Organization, no, not the World Health Organization, sorry, the U.S. government has started very robust studies and trials on the monkeypox, as we were discussing. And there's quite a few organizations in here that I have been involved with before. But there's a couple of things, a couple of agencies that are in the main body of this particular article that kind of really piqued my interest as to why would they need to be involved in the study or clinical trials or any kind of studies to do with health and human services. I'm not sure. For example, DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Now, if you do any real research on DARPA, you will find that it is a very, very dark and secret organization that develops some of the damnedest things. I mean, I'm not going to go into that, but you do your own research. They create a lot of good things, but there's also some things that have come out of the organization that are questionable. And, you know, like I said, this is all based on research. This is not me seeing that. They've been part of that organization, right? And then the other one that really struck me as odd was Department of Energy. Why exactly would the Department of Energy need to be involved in a research study, a medical research study? That just seems very odd that they're linking some of these really oddball things to the monies involved in clinical trials and trials to test vaccines and diagnostic components. I guess that would be the right word. You know, the epidemiology of the virus, you know, education, all these different things. And I'm like, why are some of these organizations involved? If you were to look back at that COVID stimulus package that I had discussed at the beginning or earlier in this podcast, you will find that there's a lot of money being put into places that have nothing to do with the virus or the treatment or the diagnosis or the vaccination. Absolutely nothing. You know, other countries getting money. It's just insanely laborious amounts of money being put in places that don't belong. So how much money really was put towards COVID, I don't know. You know, I can tell you, as these vaccines are rolled out and they're pushed and they're mandated, we're going to find that a lot more of our liberties are going to be taken away. And, you know, we'll circle back around to that probably as we end. The more they do these things, the more people comply and become complicit in just accepting the ideas and the laws and the direction of the governmental laws. You know, that's kind of where we're at as human beings, right? And so during COVID, it was very easy to get people to comply with mask mandates, and for the large part, the vaccine administration, because without doing those things, a lot of people couldn't have a job. They didn't get to keep their jobs. A lot of people in the military got kicked out because they wouldn't do it. At the time was making tremendous money doing COVID management, not doing it, managing people who were managing that. And so not taking the vaccinations and wearing the masks would have kept me out of about a $200,000+ a year job. So, you know, there's a lot of things that drive us. I'm not saying that's noble or not. I'm just saying we get put into these positions where, you know, it's like, do we survive in this life, or do we push back and not comply? I mean, it's a tough choice. It really is, especially when you got a family and you got kids and you got, that's one thing if it's just you, but when you got a lot of other people to consider, it's a different story, right? So here we are with this monkeypox thing that's coming around. And I believe we're going to see something very, very similar to COVID. Probably maybe not as robust as the COVID thing. I don't know. We'll see. As I was looking at some of the signs and symptoms and things of monkeypox, it sounds like it's not fun. If you look at the symptoms and signs, they're very much like a super flu, like COVID would be, right? The only difference is the rash. And according to this information that I've been able to find, this particular rash lasts, 3 to 4 weeks maybe, or 2 to 4 weeks, I think it said. And so it's not the end of the world. Now, would it put you out of work for a while? Yeah, I'm sure. And if you don't have enough health insurance and medical leave and all these different kinds of things, it's going to hurt your pocketbook for sure. And the other thing that is disturbing is that they are primarily targeting the LGBTQ community. Especially in the articles that I've recently read, it targets or points out that men that have sex with men are the biggest population that will actually acquire this problem of monkeypox or transmit it or become carriers. And this is very similar to what happened in AIDS. And guess what? It turned out not to be just a gay thing. It turned out to be an everybody thing. And so we have a lot of very interesting similarities happening in monkeypox, just like some of the other things that have happened, right? And so fortunately, though, the vaccine is not something that is being developed as we go along. At least that's what it appeared in COVID. I'm not sure if that's really the case, but it certainly appeared that way. But they have a vaccine, and it looks like they're doing studies to make it more effective, or at least that's what they're funding. And so I'm hoping that's the case. But, the other thing that came up in some recent videos that I watched was some information or clips of videos where the CDC and the World Health Organization was talking about being able to or developing or having the need to figure out who has been vaccinated and who has not been vaccinated, and that they're using some special kind of instrumentation or electronics or IT type stuff to determine who's had vaccines and who has not. And if they're doing that, if that's really the case, it looks like an authentic video from those guys. That would mean that they certainly want to make sure that everybody has this particular vaccine or any other vaccine that's coming along. And let's go ahead and go down the alternative route here, the alternative side of this. If you wanted to control billions of people, I think we're getting nearly 9 billion people on this planet. If you wanted to have full control of people, to do things in a more devious way, it's just simply impossible to control that many people unless you have other inside guys, right? And so if you're introducing different technologies, which they have been talking about with these vaccines, nanoparticles and such, and you can go on and on and on down that rabbit hole. The amount of things that have been introduced to the human body to basically where we're becoming part of the Internet of Things. And so, if you think that you're going to be able to hide, you're sadly mistaken, right? When I was in the military, they started a program back in, I want to say early 90s or maybe 80s, where they actually decided they needed to start collecting DNA samples from everybody with the idea that, that'd be the best way to identify you on a battlefield if you were blown to smithereens. Well, I guess that makes sense. But at the same time, they now have your signature. They can find you anywhere they want, to be honest. There's some good things and some bad things with everything that is happening out there. we are becoming slowly, bit by bit, tiptoeing into a totalitarian society. Now, this is something that people like David Icke talks about a lot. If we were to put out something that says, we're gonna chip everybody, we're gonna insert all these things into everybody's body, and it will happen, and they just throw it out there, everybody would fight back, and then the masses against the few would never win. So you would have to do that in a very slow and methodical process where people get used to it. Right? You're getting people used to control. If you can make billions of people wear masks and force people to stay home and force businesses to close and all these different things, to get in line with this pandemic, if it really was one, whether it was or not, you get the point. You actually have mastered the art of control. And I'd like to think that there's not those kind of things happening, but I can tell you that there's some devious things happening, in my opinion. No, this is not proof. None of the things I'm talking about tonight or this evening are proof of anything. This is a challenge to do your own work. I'm just throwing ideas out there. I might be bouncing all over the place. I get it. But I'm trying to get some of these thoughts out as they come out. Like I said at the beginning, there's no scripts here, right? I remember, for example, during COVID, when I got my second vaccination for COVID. I mean, the first one wasn't bad. It really didn't affect me that much. When I got my second one, every one of my issued IT devices, laptops, hotspots, cell phones, all those things literally quit working. I mean, there was very, very spotty coverage. I could barely get through to anything. I tried my own phones, everything. And I thought it was a global outage. But as I was asking my subordinates about it, nobody else had that problem but me. And the odd part is it lined up, the amount of days that this was going on lined up to how bad I felt. So for about 3 days, I felt like crap because of it. I mean, I just felt like they gave me COVID. But, I don't know if they did or not. But the point is that aligned with my IT malfunctions. Is there something to that? I don't know. I would encourage you guys to really pay attention to what is going on in the world. Can we do anything about it? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is, being ignorant of what's going around you, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that at least knowing what's coming and giving yourself ideas or ways and information and research to make some kind of informed decision to decide what you're going to do. But if you take everything at face value, people, they're just going to run you through the mill. They're going to drag you by the nose, and it's just going to be whatever they want. And it may still be that way, but at least you know what's going on. And we live in a world now where you can find anything you want on the internet, even though what we can get on the normal open internet is only about 1% all there is. It's still an enormous amount, right? It is everywhere. There's nothing that can't be found. You can find it if you're interested. This monkeypox thing is going to be very interesting to watch evolve, and I have a feeling it's going to come down to that, and it's an election year, right? Somebody wants to jump in and save the day. Boom. Guess what? Here we go. Right? And I think it's the plan. If you look at history, it keeps repeating itself over and over and over again. And I'm not a big history guy. But, if you pay attention, you can find that everything just is in patterns. And it happens over and over and over again. And none of us are learning, right? Now, I guess the question is, do we have any choice in the matter? Will we actually have choices? Well, we always have choices. That is the one thing that in all the metaphysical and spiritual and theological, all that type of research and ideas and information and writings, it always talks about the fact that we always have choices. Free will is one of the things that us as human beings have that a lot of other societies do not. And we have it more so in the United States. Now, is those rights to choose, that free will, is that something that is more of a mirage, because it feels like we have choice? But in the real world, if we want to survive and thrive and eat and have houses and have cars and raise our kids, and you have to comply. So yes, we have a choice. Could we simply not comply and live under a bridge and eventually die out? Sure. But we have choices, right? And so I believe that the times that are coming, the times that are here, we all are going to have to make hard choices. We're all going to have to decide whether we're going to go with the narrative or we're going to take a risk and give them the middle finger, right? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch how the human race in the world and at large reacts to the things that are coming, because they're coming. There's a lot of interesting things coming. And some of it's scripted, I believe, and some of it is not. But I believe that we are alive at a very interesting time where we're going to see some things that have not been seen in our known history, at least. Ready for a ride, people, because it's coming. I challenge you guys to learn how to meditate, how to connect, how to learn for yourself how to be the best version that you can be, and so that you can become the kind of human being that needs to be in place to help as humanity goes through all these things, because we need more soldiers out there that can help others, that can help the world, that can help everybody through these things, because it's coming. I mean, even if you believe in the biblical writings and some of the other religious writings, it's been written for a long time that these things are coming. Are those writings real and authentic? That's up to you to decide. But the point is, it's been talked about for a long time. It's no surprise that it's here. We need to become stronger in all aspects of our human being or our human existence. We need to be strong physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, all the above. We need to do everything we can to become a solid human being, because at the end of the game, we need those strong human beings standing tall, because we want the human race to continue. We want humanity to thrive and not simply to have to survive. So I know I talked about a lot of things and I kind of went around in circles. But once again, challenge, accept the challenge. Learn to connect. Learn to hear what you need to hear from the other side, from your spirit guides, or what you consider to guide you from the other side. You would be amazed the kind of things you'll hear. I didn't even put any of that stuff in this podcast like I did the last one. It's an amazing cosmic internet out there that we are missing. We're being distracted by all these crazy things in this world, and it's keeping us from becoming our true self, to have the knowledge, the wisdom, the ideas that will carry us forward in the evolution of our human life that we came here to experience. So accept my challenge. As usual, I'd like to hear from you guys. Go to my website when you get a chance, lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. Find the contact page, and there's a few ways to contact me. Reach out to me. Be interesting to hear your thoughts on this, and we can collaborate. And the power of more than one is a beautiful thing. I look forward to hearing from you. You will hear from me again. Have an awesome day.